little bit about myself. I've got just over 25 years in the IT industry. All of that is either end user facing or owning and delivering end user services. So very, very familiar with users and their issues in the environment. And currently I own the user experience service in Kenvue. Who's Kenvue? Company you've probably never heard of before, but products which you've seen, probably have in your household right now, or probably even used this morning. The purpose of Kenvue right now is realize the extraordinary power of everyday care. So the products that we have here, and this is just a handful of products compared to the 150 that we have globally. These are your go-to day-to-day products that you'd tend to use for your day-to-day healthcare. Okay, not necessarily the premium stuff that you put on for your night out, but this is your day-to-day stuff. How was Kenvue born? Kenvue was born from a company called J&J, who you're probably all very familiar with, Johnson & Johnson. They took their consumer sector and spun it off into its own company, and Kenvue was born just about 3 years ago. Kenvue is 30,000 strong in representation across the world with multiple different languages. When Kenvue was born, the IT environment was pretty much a copy and paste of J&J, okay? A lot of the J&J applications, a lot of the J&J services were there from the start. Nexthink, which was really nice, was a brand new installation, okay? So all the devices that came over from J&J into Kenvue, they came over with Windows 11, fresh build, with Nexthink on. So Nexthink was installed and just listening, collecting a whole bunch of data. Few things remained clear when we arrived in Kenvue. The business needed to complete its TSA, so we were still using a lot of J&J apps as well as having a lot of legacy J&J apps. And we needed to find our own identity. We need to right-size all those applications. We need to renegotiate a whole bunch of contracts to make sure they're fit for purpose for Kenvue, not from the J&J side. My challenge was how to build a UX service, and of course I had Nexthink, so Nexthink is my primary tool. But that's just to give you an idea of the transformation, the change that's happening in the environment from Kenvue from day one, and that's what we inherited. So, our goals, my UX goals. Before I get into the UX goals, the subtitle there, we put people first, we care fiercely, we earn trust with science, we solve with courage. That is Kenvue's vision, and that matches perfectly with what we need to do in user experience. If we think about we put people first, 25 years managing end user issues, understanding the frustrations which people have in the organization, putting people first. We care fiercely. We own these services that we deliver to the users, and we really want to have a positive experience. Earn trust with science. Nexthink is collecting a vast amount of data, understanding that data, knowing what to do with that data, listening to those user stories, matching that to data to find out what those issues are, and then come up with a solution. That is what we do. And solve with courage. Once we've done that, once we've got those stories and we know what to do, we know we're going to have a positive impact, therefore we can move forward with it, okay? And that is exactly what Kenvue is about, and that's exactly what I'm doing in user experience. So my goals then within user experience more specifically, I've got to meet the business objectives. I've got to make sure that the business are able to meet their objectives. I've got to make sure the individual productivity of a user is high. I've got to make sure that my IT colleagues, with all this vast data that I've collected, have access to that data so they themselves can come to their conclusions quicker about what they can do to improve their service. And on top of all of that, we are utilizing the Nexthink DEX score. Right now our target is 75, okay? And that is now at the IT level, okay, the organization level. My challenge right now is I'm the wheel and the cog that's making Nexthink drive and work and drive that score up to 75. And as you'll hear in a second, I need the rest of IT to come along with me on the journey, okay? So how am I putting this together then? Okay, so I've just mentioned the internal adoption. I can't be the single point of contact for Nexthink. I can't be the single person operating Nexthink. I need the rest of IT to come along the journey. While I'm still the product owner of Nexthink who will manage critical activities like remote actions, the IT community can still listen to those stories, identify those issues, and at least bring the remote action requirements to me. Employee engagement. I need to make sure that Nexthink is configured and ready for that high level of adoption from IT. So making sure that our engagement, our ability to collect those stories from the user, our ability to intervene with the user through those pop-ups are measurable and of high quality, and automate everything we do. I need to make sure that when the IT community arrive in Nexthink, that Nexthink is fit for purpose. I need to make sure that the data is working for them. I need to get Nexthink as connected as possible to our other IT systems, okay? So that is what I'm trying to achieve. Stabilize, optimize, and transform. When Kenvue was born, our CIOs came to us and says, okay, this is what we need to do. Very, very simple. Year 1, year 2, year 3. Stabilize, optimize, transform. So here I have this Nexthink platform, which is just listening. In all those 4 pillars that we have from Nexthink: reactive, proactive, preventative, and strategic, this is very much reactive, is the stabilize. What is going on with the tickets? And proactive, what do I see in the data? And how can I enact positive change in that environment? So stabilize was step 1, really going after the obvious, easy issues in the environment and resolving those. Optimize, this is where we continue in the proactive component, where we start really leaning in on dashboards and setting up automation for the remote actions, and where we start to introduce flow to handle some of that work for us. And transform. Transform is where I take a massive leap towards strategic and really start connecting Nexthink to the other tools in the system. So for example, we've got a huge demand from HR. We've connected Nexthink now to the HR tool for Qualtrics. Okay, that's engaging with the user many times a year to understand the pulse of the business. Connecting it to our Active Directory environment to enrich Nexthink more with more IT data. Connecting it to our other IT tools like Virtual Assistant and ITSM for incident management, which is currently underway right now. So really transforming Nexthink, making sure it's fit for purpose to receive the rest of the IT community. So how am I going to get the rest of the IT community to use Nexthink? That is a huge, huge, huge challenge. It's a mindset shift. You need to get people to work in a slightly different way. Not a totally different way, but a slightly different way. Today, if we think about our IT communities, they're using ITIL and ITSM as a measure of success, which is a good measure. They're keeping the lights on, they're keeping their servers up, they're keeping their applications up. They are making sure that when users do engage, that those incidents are resolved timely and prioritized. It's a good measure. Nothing wrong with that at all. They're also busy with a whole bunch of other activities. I mentioned already the contract renegotiations, the right sizing, the innovation and transformation of, do we go with that application, do we do another application? What does the business need? All the business demand that's come in, because the Kenvue is still trying to find its own identity. So what does Kenvue need to look like in a few years? That is what everyone is working towards. Me trying to come to the IT community at the same time saying, oh, now you need to start working like this, it's a lot. It's a big pill to swallow. So my challenge still remains, how do I remove myself as the choke point? My DEX score is 75, and that's the challenge, and I want to get it 80. And I can't do that on my own with the amount of change that's going on in the organization. It's just not possible. I need to get that adoption from the IT community into Nexthink and drive that engagement with the business and keep that engagement high and meaningful. I need to make sure that Nexthink is delivering those business requirements. And ultimately, because the DEX score is at the top KPI right now for IT, we need to make sure that DEX score goes up and stays up with all this transformation that's underway. So very, very difficult ask, not something that can be done overnight. How am I going to help with this adoption that's required then? So if we break up the 4 activities from Nexthink into 2 distinct halves, improving the DEX score and protecting the DEX score. Reactive and proactive is obviously improving. Protecting is where we're preventive business strategic. Now, I'm going to go into each one of these and give you some examples. What I've done is I've created a roadmap. That roadmap has got a whole bunch of items which form a checklist that says if you are behaving or doing these behaviors, then you are reactive, you're proactive, or preventive, or strategic. But if you're not doing them all, and you're just using Nexthink, then you're not really fully adopting Nexthink. And if we're not fully adopting Nexthink, we're not really realizing the entire value that we can get out of Nexthink. Certainly not going to be able to drive that score to 80 and keep it at 80. So I've developed a full checklist, as I said, from my operating Nexthink for the last 2 years. So this is my way of sharing my learning with the IT community in the form of a checklist which they can just follow step by step by step. An example of reactive, easy to follow here because it's very ITIL, ITSM related. What have you got in your queue? What are your priorities in the queue? Can you find that in the data, okay, in Nexthink? And if you can find that in the data in Nexthink, my team will help you with remote actions. My team will help you with dashboards to track that change to resolution. Proactive, now that you're in Nexthink, what else can you see in Nexthink that the data is telling you? Are you listening to your users? I'll help you with a campaign to go out there and ask questions of the users. You'll get the information. You'll be able to match the stories of their struggles, their issues, their wants, their needs with that data. I can then also help you with more dashboards. I can help you with more remote actions to make that beneficial for you and drive more value. Preventative. What do we mean by preventative? How do we make sure, and this is protecting the DEX score now, how do we make sure that when there's a change coming, that change doesn't disrupt the business or lower the DEX score some more? So are my IT colleagues going into Nexthink, are they taking a subset of the population and driving that change with that subset and looking at the results from Nexthink? Are they meeting their goals and requirements, objectives of the change, and seeing that in Nexthink? So if they're doing that, and again, there's a whole subtext on how you do that. You've got to get a representative chunk of the audience. You don't just pick 100 people at random. You've got to look at who your audience are, figure out what devices they have, make sure it's representative, etc., etc. But once you've done that, can you see a positive or negative change with what you're trying to implement? So that's preventative. I'm only touching on some of the checklist items here. And then strategic. This is a big one. This is the one which takes us out of being a cost center and turns us into a business partner by linking Nexthink into the different parts of the organization. I already mentioned Qualtrics with HR. If we look inward with IT, linking it to the ITSM tool. If we look at just outputting the data into the data lake, the opportunities there. One key example would be asset management. How accurate is our asset management? You probably have stories you can share. You probably don't know where every single asset is. Well, once you combine the asset management data with the Nexthink data, you're able to draw a much more clear view. Of course, it's the data lake. So what else can you throw in the data lake? Like Intune. Now you've got 3 sources of data to improve your asset management. And other example would be battery health. Okay, by linking Nexthink to a third party like Lenovo, you can see warranty information. So now I can see whose batteries are dying and they're still in warranty. And regardless of whether or not the user tells us via ticket, because we know users don't raise tickets, we can already intervene on that and raise a ticket for them and have the battery fixed under warranty at no extra cost to the company. Okay, that is where you become strategic. This is where you start saving a lot of money, and this is where you start partnering with the business. So what I've done here, like I said, is I've created a checklist. Can you run through this entire pillar? Can you tick every single box? If you can tick every single box, then that is what you are. If you can't tick every single box in that pillar, then you're only partially preventative, you're only partially strategic. So that is my approach for bringing in the IT community. And there's more, which I didn't mention. I've got so many things I can talk all day on this topic. Executive buy-in. I need to make sure not only have I got my checklist ready, not only have I got my governance ready and in place, I need to make sure that the executive buy-in is there to make sure that they're mandating that the IT audience also participate in this. So once it becomes more required that you start using Nexthink, I need to make sure it's there and ready for them to use and easy to use. One of the things I'm doing beyond just the checklist is the configuration of the tool of Nexthink itself. And here we're enlisting Flow. Flow, introduced last year, I think, or just a little bit longer, came initially with the ability to, this was the first use case, was the ability to help manage your campaigns more intelligently. Stitching campaigns together depending on the scenario, it would call the right campaign, or it would stitch multiple campaigns together to create a single campaign which was more engaging for the user, and thereby more higher quality feedback coming back from the business. Validation checks. I've got a really strong example of this one in the next slide, so I won't go over this too much, but just to say, with Flow, we can now, in a pop-up, ask the user for free text. And as you might imagine, a user might not be fully engaged in the moment while they're trying to answer these questions, and they might just provide a full stop or a space or something just to move on to the next question. I'm sure we've all seen it at some point. With Flow, we can actually enforce a more constructive feedback in those free texts. Timing control. Just because we provide a pop-up in the moment doesn't mean it's the right moment. So I have the ability to put on our campaigns a remind me later option. Now that remind me later option is configurable depending on the criticality of the campaign, an hour from now, a day from now, a week from now, but they always have the option of delaying their response because in the moment might not be the right moment for them, and hopefully when it comes back, it is a better moment, thereby increasing the chance of receiving positive feedback. And then API connectivity. Again, this goes back to strategy. This is really, really big. The more you can connect your Nexthink tool to, the more enriched your Nexthink environment, the more informed your decision making. Really quick example of this one would be ingesting some HR data. I'm now able in Nexthink to see attached to the user record, whether it's an employee partner. Also with HR, we are identifying who the senior leaders are, the C-suite execs in Kenvue. So we attach that label to those user records. Any PC that a C-suite exec logs into, that PC through Flow gets tagged as a C-suite exec's computer device. Now, what I can do with that is I can create a dashboard that looks at either users or devices for C-suite level. If you're familiar with Nexthink, you know it's not so easy to create an investigation to walk between the user table and the device table. And if we think about an IT community trying to step into the Nexthink world who doesn't know how to do all that, the automatic labeling and providing that information in the right place makes it a lot easier for adoption. So, quick deep dive example here. We had a requirement not long after going live, being born, that Java, you're all familiar with Java, they did a big licensing push. So the decision from up on high was, We don't want Java. There are other solutions on the market. It's a $2 million risk to Kenvue. Get it out. So that's 100% compliance now we have to do. Now, if we think about Nexthink versus Intune. Intune I call the big stick. Nexthink I call the surgical strike. With Intune, you can, via policy, just policy this stuff out, okay? But that's too big a stick at the beginning. You need the surgical strike at the beginning to go out there and understand what people are using Java for, so that you can make sure that the solution you're trying to implement is fit for purpose. You don't want to break the business. So while Intune was stopping the installation of new installs of Java, Nexthink was working behind the scenes to understand why people were using Java and then move them off Java onto the new platform. Okay, so this is where we got that text input. So clearly going out to the organization, oh yeah, we can use campaigns, fantastic. We fire a campaign at the user. Why are you using Java? Rubbish in, rubbish out. We got some good business justification, but we also got some bad business justification. So we reworked it with the Nexthink team, came up with Flow to do some justification, validation in here. And, you know, we required a certain, very simple rule. We just need a certain number of minimum characters in there, okay? Which suddenly improves the quality of the results we were getting back. With Nexthink as well, you can say, okay, who's got it installed, who's using it, who's not using it. So install Java, not using it, round one gone. Everyone who's left, why are you using it? Got that information in. That was round two, round three. Okay, so these are like the top 4, top 5 things why people are using it. Go back to them again. Is this what you're using it for? Confirm. And then, you know, you whittle down and whittle down and whittle down until it's all gone. At the end of the day, we did get 100% engagement from the employees. We did get 100% of Java removed, and we're in a much healthier position now. No risk to IT from Java. It did a couple of things for us. Number one, we were able to show that we could do that level of change management. And number two, Nexthink became the choice for usage of software and understanding what people are doing with those applications, not just Flexera. So now we got the Flexera and Nexthink tool working together to figure that out. Second deep dive I have for you in Flow. This is in development, so I don't have the value from this yet, but these are the requirements that we have with Flow. Connecting Nexthink for incident management. I said earlier, IT obviously have a very strong ITIL, ITSM background and mindset. Without disrupting IT too much and stepping into this world of user experience, we can still take the issues that we identify in Nexthink, that they themselves come up with, hey, I need an alert for this, and then make sure that ends up as an incident in their queue. Now that's easy, you can do that without Flow. But what I'm trying to do with Flow is I'm trying to say, okay, if you've used alerts before, you know it can send multiple emails to your mailbox. That gets deprioritized. I don't want to flood our ticketing tool with lots of reminders to alerts, because Nexthink closes alert and reopens alert when it sees it again. What I want Nexthink to do is I want a little bit more intelligent than that, is create the ticket, yes, but the next time that alert fires is check if there's a ticket that's already there. If the ticket exists, update it with more information of what's going on. So you see the evolution of that issue as it happens, and then eventually giving time for the resolving team to close that incident, hopefully close the incident, and then we don't see that alert trigger for a while, and then should the trending start to happen again, we restart the whole process. So this is where we're using their existing ways of working, pulling them into Nexthink at the moment that they need to be pulled into Nexthink for the right reasons. How does that work for the employees? Well, with the employees, we know they're not logging a ticket for every single issue they're seeing. There's also this expectation that IT can see these things. IT should be fixing these things. So this is going to help us enable that story. So I mentioned Flow is key to my adoption strategy. Right now, I've got 16 flows in place that are live. We've activated and retired some as well already. Throughout the year, we've delivered 33 campaigns, self-heal as well as information gathering. The ITSM integration underway, but we're using Flow for other integrations to manage that data and flow of data. Half year, we've got employee time saved now at 12,000 hours, IT time saved now at 8,500 hours, and our engaging impact at 58% on average, which, if you take the email engagement, is way higher. And people are not prioritizing email. This is why our business partners are coming to IT, HR facilities are coming to IT asking for our help with engaging with the business, and of course going all the way up to 100%, like I said, for Java. What's next for me? So I really need to step more into the preventative world and the strategic world. I want to continue to protect that DEX score. I want to get my colleagues into Nexthink. I want to get them really becoming more reactive, more proactive, and more preventative, of course, and strategics. But we need to get them into the preventative first. I've linked each one of those pillars to Nexthink certified training tracks. So with the preventative, we need them to be doing the Nexthink professional. With the strategic, we need to be doing the application experience management. My measure of success, apart from standing up governance to figure out what people are doing with Nexthink, I'm looking for Flow to continue to help with adoption. I'm looking for Flow to be responsible for at least 60% of the value that we gather from the tool across the adoption. And with strategic, I need to continue to connect Nexthink to more systems. If I'm the single champion, I don't have that level of creativity to see across the entire ecosystem and work all this stuff out. The more actors I have in Nexthink, the more requirements we'll have, and the richer will become Nexthink. Final takeaway to walk away with today. Adoption. If you're the platform owner and you're resolving issues and working in the system, fantastic. I believe that having help from across the IT organization is going to be key to get maximum value out of Nexthink. We need to make sure that Nexthink is fit for purpose for that adoption. I need to make sure that the information which they get out of Nexthink is of high quality, and we need to make sure that when we go to the business that we come back with that high quality of information. And connect Nexthink and automate the data is going to make that adoption a lot easier, Nexthink much more richer, and allow us to make those decisions much faster. Thank you. Any questions?
So hi, it was a very insightful presentation for us, at least, because we're, let's say, on the same road, also with Flow.
Yep.
Really insightful. So one question would be, what was your biggest, let's say, bottleneck with adopting and creating the most important or the most critical workflows within the company, and how you gathered everyone to understand and to put together those workflows so that it can get the peak value that you know that.
Yep, indeed. I'm going to stick with that Java example because I presented already and everyone can see it. I wouldn't, as the platform owner of Nexthink, looking at an environment, I wouldn't have come up with that as a business requirement. So that's the reason why I now need the IT audience to come to me and say, this is what we need from Nexthink. So that was a great requirement coming to me. 100%, $2 million was a big ask, okay? And that's why I use this example to share. Other examples, they're interesting, they're just not as interesting as that one. Okay, so trying to solve our everyday tasks, blue screens, various other bits and pieces like that. I really got the team to focus on, okay, very simple campaign and an intervention on that, but how can we enrich that with Flow? Okay, I think probably the most The next most interesting after that was enriching of the data. The ability to tag different data sets from an incoming stream, it just makes life so much easier, because if you think of how complex some of these investigations need to be just to walk across all those tables, but if you can add all that data in the right table, it makes it much easier, much easier. So what this is 2.5 years of learning, figuring out how to make my life easier, knowing that my IT colleagues who are trying to use Nexthink, absolutely, they're just not up to the same level as me. I'm building that checklist so that they can now measure how far they've come. That's what this is all about, bringing them along with the journey and then adding more IT people into the journey. So, okay. We have another one?
Thank you. You were talking about adoption and engagement. How did you manage to overpass those obstacles, considering the vast amount of people you'll be working with?
So, the adoption is still on the way, okay? Engagement is never finished, I suppose, is the best way of describing it. So, where am I with adoption right now? If I look at the IT organization, we have a core end user team, okay? End user compute, productivity, collaboration, and the service desk operations, support operations, service desk and site support. Each one of those adoption is actually quite unique. The service desk are going to adopt in a totally different way than an application owner or the platform owner, the compute owner. So with the end user core team versus the application owners, that's a very, very intimate relationship. So we're sitting down with that team very closely and going through their requirements on a very regular basis. I need to step away from that so I can concentrate on the wider audience. But with end user compute, that's a huge chunk of the DEX score. So it requires that level of intimacy to remain. But they are using Nexthink, and this checklist is going to help them really mature on that. It's valid for them as it'll be valid for the IT application owners as well. Productivity and collaboration is a very same story. The good thing is that we sit side by side with productivity and collaboration, literally next to them, and they're listening to my stories and they're engaging with me as well. So we've got that level of intimacy, which is nice. And we're now at the point with productivity that we've done a massive renegotiation of Microsoft Office environment licensing, and we're now able, this is strategic now, the strategic pillar, we're now able to take the Nexthink data, which shows the usage of Microsoft, not just whether someone's got it, but the usage of it, and we're automating that now for license management. So to put the individual on the right level of licensing based upon their usage. So we've got different maturity of different groups, and it's really trying to get everyone on board, which is going to be a very, very big step.
Any other questions?
Another question? We have another one here.
Thank you for sharing all your experiences in implementing Flow. Just wanted to hear from you about your challenges in implementing Flow in your organization when you started off with using Flow. If you could share some.
Yep. So I would say if we think back to the 4 examples, the campaigns, the API connectivity, oh gosh, I forget what the other 2 are without them on the screen. Those were all like my level of creativity. I think the challenge is what else can you do with Flow and how else can it help, right? So pretty much everything I've thought of so far, we've been able to configure Flow to do in some way, shape, or form, okay? Always, how can I make this easier, or how can I make this more insightful? So Flow is very, very flexible in that respect. I think the challenge is what else can we do with Flow, and just keep pushing that boundary and keep pushing it. I look forward every time to see Flow updates, because it's like, oh, I can do more stuff. Yeah. So really, I use the Nexthink Accelerate team. I don't know if everyone else is using Accelerate, but I use Accelerate to help me with the platform configuration. So I come up with the requirements, they come back with whether it's possible or not, and then we try and bring it along as close to those requirements as possible if it's not. So I've got a team behind me. But another one.
So this is more of a complex question. So take in consideration the condition campaigns and the time control. How did you establish how many campaigns you need to send out rather than make them as an email?
Yeah. This is not a new question. I was in a presentation yesterday and the same question came up. How do we make sure that we've got a level of governance and control over campaigns? I've heard of a very creative solution, which is very nice, where Nexthink isn't making the decision. Another tool is making the decision and firing the campaign through API and making sure that users receive the right campaign at the right time. I don't have that level of maturity or sophistication just yet. I'm managing it through a governance. Okay, so right now I'm the single champion. Everything's coming through me. I'm making sure that the requirements from facilities, the requirement from HR, the requirement internally from IT, that we're not overloading the environment with those campaigns. But at the same time, I'm also cognizant of the self-heal campaigns that are going on. Hey, you're low on disk space, press this button here to clear out this folder, this folder, or this folder, right? So that's still popping up as well. So it's a difficult balance that it all depends on your organization and what the communication strategy is. But definitely with HR, we only do things once a quarter. With security, we do things ad hoc, but then the formula is, well, for that moment in time, nothing else goes out. Self-heal still goes out. I'm not stopping self-heal, but all the other campaigns go out. Also, I'm very picky. I'm very picky with what we push out. It's got to be actionable. Hey, there's a new website launched. That's not Nexthink, right? It's got to be actionable. So we really want to track the value and outcome of that campaign with that third party. Otherwise, we don't do it. If they don't have a way of measuring the success of that campaign, we don't do it. So I'm at the door with those requirements, and I'm determining when it goes. I need to move out of that. I'm trying to build a much bigger governance body that manages that flow better, but that's my maturity level right now.
What's on the timing control? How did you establish how long that timing control?
Again, that's me. So with coordination of the original requirements. So if it's, for example, password reset, okay, they're emailed 2 weeks up front. Finally gets to 1 week, then Nexthink starts popping up. So with password reset, remind me later, we can do that the next day. I don't need to do it like several times a day, okay? So depending on the requirement and depending on the level of confidence from the requester, we can come to an agreement on that timing. Also, you have a second option. You can do remind me later 15 minutes, remind me later an hour, or remind me later whatever. Yeah. So you can present more than one remind me later. You can configure it any way you want.
Amazing. Let's give another round of applause. Thank you, Ali. Thank you.